What's up, guys? Here are my predictions for UFC 235 happening this Saturday, and this card's insane, man. It's crazy stacked. All the way from the first prelim fight, Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall, to the main event, every fight is worth watching. And we all have to thank Johnny Walker for making this card even better than before, because OSP pulled out of the card and potentially getting CIRKUNOV off the card as well, and Walker stepping up on short notice, man. And we're gonna start with that fight, MISHA CIRKUNOV versus Johnny Walker. This is gonna be an extremely interesting fight. Each fighter has never faced something like their opposition. Now CIRKUNOV, he was getting ready for OSP, and actually getting ready for OSP, getting thrown into a fight with Johnny Walker isn't gonna be that problematic to make that switch, because OSP and Walker are both very unorthodox, unpredictable, very athletic, and powerful fighters. Walker's a bit more technical, he's a bit more of a striker than OSP is, and bigger, as well as being more athletic. I mean, we're talking about Johnny Walker, who is easily the biggest fighter in this entire division. Standing at 6'6", 240 pounds walking weight, that's absolutely insane. He weighs as much as guys like Stipe Miocic and Cain Velasquez, and he's fighting in this division, as well as being much taller and super athletic. MISHA CIRKUNOV is going to want to take this fight to the ground, 100%. It's an obvious game plan. Doesn't want to stay on the feet too long. CIRKUNOV doesn't have the best chin. In his last two fights, he got knocked out pretty early. And even against Volkan Oezdemir, who does have power in his hands, the shot that was able to drop him is a bit worrisome when he's facing a guy like Johnny Walker, because those unorthodox punches are going to be even more present in this fight. Now, CIRKUNOV has the fundamentals on the feet. He has a good left high kick. He rushes a little bit too much into a takedown, and that's going to put him in danger against a guy like Johnny Walker because of the reach difference, as well as the distance work of Walker. Walker's kicks are so powerful. His back fist that he hits everybody with, that back fist he knocked out Justin Ledet with, is an attack he uses on a lot of fighters. Usually when he throws a kick, he misses or it gets blocked. The opponent thinks they have an opening on him, and he swings back that back fist and drops you. So CIRKUNOV rushing in and trying to blitz on Johnny Walker is going to be a bit worrisome. Now the thing about this fight is, we don't know what Johnny Walker's takedown defense actually looks like. And it's going to be tested against a very good grappler, a good wrestler in CIRKUNOV. So that's the only thing we don't know about Johnny Walker, and it can make or break this fight. But my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go Johnny Walker, and I'm going to go by a first round knockout. And the reason for that is CIRKUNOV, whenever he's on the attack, whenever he's offensive, he does leave himself vulnerable. And Walker, keeping such a long distance with his light movement, able to throw hook kicks and head kicks and body kicks at will while keeping that reach on CIRKUNOV, it's going to give CIRKUNOV a hard time getting anywhere near Johnny Walker for an attack. Either it's going to be a takedown, a combination with his hands, a kick, whatever it is. And when he does explode forward, I think Walker is going to find an opening on CIRKUNOV. So then we go to the feature fight of the prelims. I'm going to be honest here, this fight for me is probably the most anticipated fight, because it's going to be the first big test for Zabit Magomedsharipov. And there's a lot of hype and a lot of expectations about him, and they're all going to be answered in this fight. So Jeremy Stephens versus Zabit Magomedsharipov. This should be a close fight. This should be a dangerous fight for both fighters. Jeremy Stephens is more of a brawler. He does swing haymakers. He has pretty good leg kicks. He has an excellent pressuring style, excellent ability to cut opponents off and intercept them as they rotate away from the cage. His punches do arc pretty wide. Yes, they have a lot of power, but they're very obvious. And against such a longer and taller fighter in Zabit, as well as faster fighter in Zabit, it's just going to be hard to catch him with those. Zabit throws everything down the center. Everything's in tight. His jab, his straight right hand, his left hook, everything's in tight and precise and quick. His form and his punches are absolutely perfect. And not only that, Zabit's kicks are insane. His side kicks are insane, two touches, spinning kicks, behind his hands, through different angles. I mean, he mixes it up better than most fighters I've ever seen. And not only that, his takedowns and his grappling might even be more formidable than his striking. His outside trips, his double legs, his single legs, his high crotches, he has everything in the book. And all of those takedowns are going to give a guy like Jeremy Stephens problems, because Stephens isn't the most elusive fighter. He likes to march forward. And yes, that can help him against such a tall fighter in Zabit, but it leaves him exposed to takedowns. If Jeremy Stephens goes out there and starts swinging haymakers or trying to counter Zabit with one of those looping hooks, Zabit could catch him with a jab down the center, because the punches on the inside do beat the punches on the outside most of the time, but you can also just go right under him for takedowns. And I believe if it gets to the ground, Zabit easily wins this fight. Now, the danger from Jeremy Stephens is, if Zabit gets tired, he has a lesser gas tank than Jeremy Stephens does, and if he allows Stephens to approach him the way Kyle Bochniak did, because Bochniak was able to walk through some punches, block them, and get in Zabit's face and just mix it up with him. And I understand Zabito's blocking and deflecting most of those punches. That's going to be a dangerous situation with Jeremy Stephens, who has the power that he has with the little gloves. But I'm going to go with Zabit Magomedsharipov, and I'm going to go by a decision. I think he's going to be able to keep Jeremy Stephens at bay, keep the jab on him. Stephens' movement of getting on the inside isn't the most complicated. It is a bit simplistic, and I believe Zabit is going to be able to catch onto the patterns, throw a lot of kicks from the far distance, a lot of jabs and left hooks as he fades away from Jeremy Stephens in the boxing exchanges. And if he ever gets in close, I see him just going down for a body lock and try to get it to the ground through that. And then we go to Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munhoz. This should be a pretty good fight. It's a good fight for Cody Garbrandt to get back into the swing of things against a dangerous fighter in Pedro Munhoz. Now, right off the bat, this should be a very favorable fight for Cody Garbrandt because of his insane takedown defense, his great movement, and his dangerous and swift boxing. Munhoz loves to take opponents to the ground. He has an excellent guillotine, excellent submissions. His takedown accuracy, though, is really not that great, and he does like to mix it up on the feet with his hands. Now, he does have a good chin. He's a tough fighter, and Cody Garbrandt doesn't really have the best chin, so Munhoz does have a chance to catch Cody Garbrandt on the feet with one of his overhands or straight right hands as Cody swings a little bit too wide with his hooks, because whenever Cody gets into a mix-up, starts trading with his opponent, his punches get wider and wider, and allows opponents to get on the inside of his punches and connect on him because he doesn't really block his chin at all. He does have good head movement, but when he's trading, when he's getting into exchanges, his head is still and open. So it's possible, but my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Cody Garbrandt. Like I said, I think he's a better boxer. He has faster hands, more power, and his takedown defense is absolutely insane. The movement of Cody Garbrandt, I think, is going to be the deciding factor of this fight. I think he's going to be able to keep some distance, stay at the mid-range, land some jabs on Munhoz to measure, as well as keeping Munhoz honest on his takedowns. And I think he's going to counter Munhoz with a right hook on the inside. So I'm going to go with Cody Garbrandt. I'm going to go by a second round TKO. And then we go to Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren. Ben Askren's much anticipated UFC debut. And both these guys are coming off a bit of a layoff. Robbie Lawler's last fight was against Rafael dos Anjos a little bit more than a year ago. And Ben Askren fought a month before Robbie Lawler's fight with RDA. So they both have pretty much the same kind of layoff. But Robbie Lawler's coming off an injury, whereas Ben Askren kind of retired. So the means is a little bit different. But Lawler has said his knee is better than before, which I do believe. When people come off those kind of surgeries, they can make the tendons in your knee stronger than before. So I'm not going to be too worried about Robbie Lawler's leg. But when we look at this fight, Robbie Lawler is going to be the striker. Ben Askren is going to be the wrestler. Ben Askren's striking is nowhere near to compare to Robbie Lawler's. If it stays standing, Lawler will knock him out pretty easily. But Ben Askren is a much better offensive wrestler than Robbie Lawler is. But here's when the biggest thing comes in. Lawler has excellent takedown defense. He has threatening defensive wrestling abilities that give guys like Johnny Hendricks problems, Rory McDonald problems. Donald Cerrone had a tough time taking him to the ground. Jake Ellenberger, Josh Koscheck. I mean, these guys have a hard time taking this guy to the ground, and they always get punished for it. Robbie Lawler may not be the best takedown defensive artist, but he's probably the most dangerous guy to have your takedowns thwarted on. If he defends your takedowns, he's going to make you pay every single time for it. And Askren shoots in a lot. And he does the same thing he does to everybody else. Askren's game plan never changes in between fights. And because of that, it makes it a lot easier to game plan for. And the distance that Ben Askren fights at is always the same. His patterns on getting in are usually the same. And Robbie Lawler has a good camp behind him. He has naturally good takedown defense. His power is enough to drop Askren with pretty much any blow, right hook or left straight. But I do see a left high kick getting in there. And we cannot dismiss Ben Askren's fight when he fought someone who had great takedown defense as well as good power in his hands in Luis Santos. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Robbie Lawler. Now, I do think Robbie Lawler is going to be able to defend many takedowns, but the difference between Ben Askren and guys like Rory McDonald is Ben Askren likes to linger on and chain wrestle a lot, whereas Rory McDonald shoots in with blast doubles and stuff. Johnny Hendricks can do both. He kind of tried against Robbie Lawler. He got punished for a lot of it, and that's something I can see with Ben Askren. Askren's very slow to get in. His footwork is pretty slow. There's no threat in his striking. If he attempts any strikes, Lawler is going to be able to move back, measure, anticipate the takedown, and potentially trying to counter him or intercept him, sprawl on top, trying to create distance, and make Ben Askren pay for it. So I'm going to go with Robbie Lawler. I'm going to go by a third round TKO. I do see Ben Askren taking him to the ground a couple times, not doing a whole lot on top. Lawler has great defense on the ground, And I see Lawler, with his experience in the UFC of fighting all these kind of wrestlers, I see him able to adapt in the fight from maybe a problematic first round to eventually getting the timing down of Ben Askren. And I see an uppercut, if not a left high kick, catching Ben Askren right after Lawler stuffs a takedown. And then we go to the co-main event, Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. Now this fight should be pretty close. This should be a very competitive fight. Two great wrestlers with decent boxing ability. Tyron Woodley, I would say, is the more powerful and faster fighter, where Kamaru Usman is the longer fighter with better cardio that fights at a higher pace. Now, right off the bat, Woodley is going to most likely back up to the cage. It depends what kind of game plan he comes out with. If he tries to pressure Kamaru Usman, I actually think Tyron Woodley pressuring Usman is going to give him more of an advantage in this fight, because looking at Usman's fights, whenever he's able to pressure opponents to the cage, he is really good at keeping a jab and really good at keeping that long length on his opponent without committing with his power. Woodley's going to have a hard time finding his right-hand counter. But if it gets in the pocket, I do think Tyron Woodley will knock out Kamaru Usman. I think if Woodley becomes aggressive and rushes Usman, I do think he can find that right hand eventually. And Usman has a great left hand. He has a great jab and a great left hook. His kicking defense is not all there. Tyron Woodley can definitely go for leg kicks if Usman is sitting on the outside to disrupt his base, disrupt his stance, and potentially find a right hand through that. Or you can even shoot it on Usman later in the rounds to win the rounds. But a counter from Kamaru Usman could be those takedowns. He's going to be looking for them. He's going to be looking for the opportunity to gas out Woodley. So I believe Usman's game plan in the fight is going to be trying to wear out Woodley early on. Put the pressure on Woodley. Keep the jab on him, keep the length, shoot in on takedowns, and not just trying to get him to the ground, but just make him work. Being confident in his cardio, and just wear out Woodley until the ground and pound and the pressure gets a little bit too much. But my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Tyron Woodley. I think he's going to find that right-hand counter. I see uppercuts, able to catch Kamaru Usman. I see leg kicks from a distance when Usman's not really committing too much. Now, don't get me wrong, this fight can go either way. I could be very much wrong with this fight. Usman definitely has a great winnable path, but I'm going to go with Tyron Woodley, and I'm going to go by a third round TKO. And then we go to the main event, Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith. And let's be honest with this fight, Jon Jones is heavily favored for a reason. He is bigger than Anthony Smith. He's much more technical in almost every area. I think where Anthony Smith is going to be dangerous is in the boxing and mid-range. Past the kicking range, right into that mid-boxing range, because Smith definitely has power. He has great extension in his punches. He's very fast with his hands. I believe he's going to be faster than Jon Jones with his hands. I believe if he sets up combinations and doesn't commit often with his combos, he should be able to catch Jones here and there. But other than that, man, I think Jones' kicks are going to give Smith a bunch of problems. His takedowns are obviously going to be the biggest threat. He is much better on the ground than Smith is. His cardio is way better than Smith's. And he just has every tool in the book. I mean, he could do many things against a guy like Smith and get away with it. The only thing is Smith has nothing to lose. Him going for broke is actually going to be an advantage for him in this fight that can give Jones an actual threat to respect. Because Smith hits hard, he hits fast, and he has insane killer instinct. But my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Jon Jones. I'm going to go by a second round submission. I think the side kicks to the legs, side kicks to the body are going to give Smith a lot of problems. Maybe some jabs, but I don't think Jones should commit too much with his boxing, giving Smith any opportunities in there. And I think behind the oblique kick, as well as maybe a jab, I see Jones getting a body lock, getting Smith to the ground, and just landing ground and pound to eventual submission. But here's another thing. In the clinch, Smith is actually a very formidable fighter. If Jones sticks in the clinch with Anthony Smith, he's going to be facing someone who can actually go blow for blow with him, that has crazy elbows, great timing on his knees, and great position work. I think Jones is better with the position, but Smith is very dangerous in the clinch. So I think the blast double legs, the single legs are going to be much more beneficial for Jones than his usual means of getting into the clinch. And then let's look at the betting odds. Let's see if there's anything interesting. I think Gina Mazzani being that much of an underdog is a bit of a stretch. I do think Macy should win that fight, but Mazzani is very game, could be dangerous in many positions. So Diego Sanchez is actually that much of an underdog? I mean, his fight with Craig White should open some eyes because Craig White has a very similar style to Mickey Gall, as well as being bigger than Mickey Gall is. And Diego Sanchez kind of dominated him with the wrestling and the grappling because Diego Sanchez is still a BJJ black belt. His technique is still there, his wrestling is still strong, and Mickey Gall isn't much of a powerful striker, so that can go either way, man. I could see Diego Sanchez winning that fight. Jeremy Stephens does have a chance. Robbie Lawler is an underdog. He's a pretty sizable underdog. I do think he should win the fight. Ben Askren can obviously get a hold of Lawler and just prove his wrestling is a bit too much. But the thing about Ben Askren is we don't know how good his wrestling is at this level, and this is the fight that's going to really test it. And Anthony Smith being that big of an underdog, man. Why not put something down on that? It's MMA at the end of the day. So yeah, most of these I actually agree with. So I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. Leave a comment below who you guys think are going to win these fights, and who's the guy that actually believes Anthony Smith is going to win. I will not be surprised if he catches Jones in the mid-boxing range or even in the clinch, but Jones should win that fight, obviously. My next video is probably going to be the Pulse Fight reaction video on this card, and then my breakdown is going to come out after that. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.